At this time, it is truly my pleasure to hand it over to our presenters today. Again, Vicki Medley, John Howlett, and Paul Sim of BSI. Welcome to all of you. Good afternoon, and the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's Paul Sim. We're going to go through a number of topics. It's on your screen. We'll talk a bit about some introductions, so some simple background and requirements, our implementation, our experience to date, and some Q&A. So the point I will just make, some of the information we are presenting has been presented before, but there is a lot of new information which is based on our experience to date so far. So a little bit in terms of the background, you'll have seen some of this previously, but part of this relates to the introduction of unannounced audits, which was brought around by the post-PIP issues identified in Commissioner Darley's comments and reports in 2012. In 2013, we saw the Commission recommendation, which is the subject of today's webinar. The requirement is likely to be part of the new medical device and IVD regulations, but the determination was made to implement it ahead of that, and there's also a piece around the notified body code of conduct, and there'll be more about that later. So the recommendation 2013 for 73 EU was published in September. It's structured around sort of the way it's laid out there. There are some articles. There are 3 annexes. One talks to product assessment. The second one talks to quality system assessment. And the third one relates to unannounced audits. 1 and 2 are primarily focused at notified bodies, but there is some information in there for manufacturers as well. And clearly, unannounced audits is focused at both the notified bodies and the manufacturer. So if we look at the articles, it talks around the council directives. You'll recognise some of the numbers there, the active implantable, the medical devices directive, and the in vitro diagnostic directive. And the point really to make is that the legal provision already and currently exists in the current regulations. Although, in a sense, notified bodies probably have used that capability to conduct unannounced audits on a limited basis, the significant change now is their mandatory requirement.
So the good news is that for all the visits we've done so far, all the manufacturers were aware. And yes, there has been some sites of large multinationals within that, but there's also been some medium-sized companies and some really quite small manufacturers. So all knew of the requirements, all were ready to receive an unannounced visit. It wasn't a complete surprise on the day, which is very positive. We certainly expected that it's possible that we'll go to a location where there wasn't an awareness of the requirement for unannounced visits. It's fair to say that the visits so far have been largely of legal manufacturers or of sites within the same umbrella organisation that may be a critical subcontractor rather than completely separate critical subcontractors. So we will be gaining more experience of those as we move forward. We have had some feedback from the manufacturers. Some of the surprises to them were that the assessment team worked together. For the normal QMS assessment, if there are 2 assessors, it's likely that there is, for example, 2, one overall agenda, but each are covering completely different areas. Yes, the opening and closing meetings and the daily wrap-ups are conducted together, but during the course of the day, they work completely independently, perhaps just catching up to share particular audit trails or if there was a particular concern. But for unannounced visits, certainly for our model, is that for the most part, not 100% of the time, but the assessment team will start together. They won't be both covering exactly the same things at the same moment. It may be that one of the team's been asking questions, the QMS assessor perhaps more focused on the production, so things like, well, can you tell me what's being produced, what particular product code, what's the calibration for that piece of equipment, can I later see, please, the operator's training records, where the technical specialist is making notes and then wishing to compare that back to the technical file or design dossier. So some of our manufacturers did say that that was new. They didn't realize that that was going to be the case.